There comes a point when silence becomes betrayal, not just of others, but of yourself. Emotional abuse doesn't leave bruises you can see, but it will break your spirit in silence. And the truth is, we don't often realize we're drowning until we're already underwater. This is for anyone who has ever questioned if what they're going through is normal, when deep inside it never felt that way. Let's talk about the quiet poison of emotional abuse. The kind that whispers, manipulates, and chips away at your self-worth until you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. Gaslighting is one of the most insidious forms of emotional abuse because it's subtle at first, and then it becomes your reality. It starts with little things. You recall a conversation that hurt you, and they say, "That never happened." You bring up something they said, and they respond with, "You're imagining things," or worse, "You're crazy." And in that moment, you feel confused, but you brush it off. Maybe you misunderstood, right? Wrong. Over time, this pattern repeats. Again and again, your perception is dismissed, your memory is denied, your feelings are invalidated. You begin to second guess yourself constantly. You wonder, am I too sensitive? Did I make that up? You find yourself apologizing for being confused, unsure, or emotional when all along it was their manipulation that made you feel that way. Gaslighting doesn't just distort events, it rewires your ability to trust yourself. You stop speaking up. You keep things to yourself. You go numb because every time you've tried to express pain, it's been turned around and used against you. The worst part, you start thinking it's your fault. You begin to believe the lie that maybe you are too emotional. Maybe you are the problem. But here's the truth. Gaslighting is not a communication problem. It's a power strategy. It's used to dominate, to control, and to erase your voice. Someone who loves you should help you feel more clear, not more confused. They should affirm your experience, not distort it. If you constantly feel like you're defending your own reality in a relationship, you are not safe, you are being manipulated. And when someone trains you to stop trusting yourself, they are not just hurting you emotionally, they are stealing your power. You must reclaim it. Gaslighting is never love. It's psychological warfare disguised as charm. And the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to remember who you were before the confusion. But trust me, you are still in there. And once you see the pattern, you can break it. You don't need their permission to leave. You only need your truth. One of the most overlooked red flags in emotional abuse is how unsafe it feels to simply feel. With an emotionally abusive person, your natural emotions, sadness, anger, hurt, joy, vulnerability, are treated not with empathy, but with hostility, shame, or punishment. Every time you express something real, they act like you're attacking them. If you cry, they roll their eyes. If you voice hurt, they dismiss you. If you get angry, they accuse you of being unstable or overreacting. They weaponize your emotions against you. So what do? You start suppressing. You learn to smile when you're breaking. You stay quiet when something hurts. You pretend everything is fine even when your heart is screaming otherwise. Slowly, you disconnect from your own feelings, not because you're emotionally immature, but because they've made it unsafe to be human around them. What's worse is that they often turn your emotional needs into burdens. Instead of meeting you with curiosity or compassion, they shame you for needing anything at all. Why are you so emotional all the time? You're too much. You take everything so personally. These phrases aren't just rude. They're designed to make you doubt your inner world. And once they do that, they can control the narrative completely. Here's the truth. Your emotions are not the problem, their inability to respect them is. A healthy person sees your feelings as invitations to deeper connection. An abusive person sees your feelings as threats to their power. Why? Because when you express discomfort, you're setting a boundary. When you ask for emotional availability, you're challenging their ability to control the dynamic, and they don't want that. They want obedience, not honesty. They want silence, not truth. So they train you, consciously or unconsciously, to numb yourself in their presence. And when you numb your pain, you also numb your joy, your creativity, your confidence. Emotional abuse doesn't just break your heart, it dims your entire spirit. But listen closely. Your feelings are valid, your sensitivity is not a flaw, and your emotional world is sacred. Anyone who makes you feel wrong for having feelings is not emotionally safe. Full stop. The moment you start hiding your tears, your truth, your needs, just to keep the peace, you are no longer in love. You are in fear. And love never requires fear to function. You are allowed to be seen, you are allowed to feel deeply, and you are allowed to walk away from anyone who treats your emotions as a threat. Because your feelings aren't too much, they're just too real for someone who lives in denial. Shame is one of the most powerful tools an emotionally abusive person will use to control you. Because unlike guilt, which says, I did something wrong, shame says there's something wrong with me. And when someone gets you to believe that lie, they can manipulate every part of your life. They might not scream, they may never raise a hand, but they know how to humiliate you just enough that you second guess your worth. They belittle your dreams, they mock your insecurities, they laugh when you're vulnerable. They bring up your past in moments where you feel weak. Maybe they compare you to others, your friends, your siblings, their exes, always in ways that make you feel less than. And eventually, you start to believe the painful lie, maybe I really am not good enough. That's how shame-based control works. It breaks your spirit from the inside out. They might make backhanded comments in public or subtle jabs in private, but it's always enough to make you shrink. And when you try to confront them, they call you too sensitive. They say, it was just a joke, or you're overreacting. So you stop bringing things up. You start accepting the disrespect. You begin to think that if you were just better, more lovable, smarter, prettier, stronger, then maybe they'd finally treat you with kindness. But here's the trap. The goalposts always move. You will never be enough for someone who thrives on you feeling less, because your shame is their control. The more ashamed you feel, the more compliant you become. You seek their approval. You crave their validation. You over-explain, over-apologize, over-give, just hoping they'll finally see your worth. But they don't want to see your worth. They want to keep you doubting it. And the longer you stay in that cycle, the more disconnected you become from your true self. You forget what you used to love. You lose sight of your voice, your boundaries, your brilliance. And that's the silent tragedy of shame. It doesn't just make you feel bad. It makes you forget who you are. But here's what shame can't survive: compassion, truth, boundaries, wholeness. The moment you begin to say, that's not about me, that's about them, is the moment you start to take your power back. The moment you refuse to internalize their projections is the moment you begin to heal. You are not broken, you are not too much, you are not lucky to be tolerated by someone who shames you. You are a whole, worthy, powerful human being, and anyone who makes you feel otherwise does not belong in the sacred space of your heart. Shame is their weapon, but it doesn't have to be your prison. One of the most heartbreaking signs of emotional abuse is when you catch yourself constantly saying, I'm sorry. Even when you've done absolutely nothing wrong, it becomes a reflex. You apologize for having needs, for expressing hurt, for asking questions, for simply existing in a way that isn't perfectly pleasing to the other person. This isn't just about being polite or keeping the peace. This is about survival. When you're in a relationship with someone emotionally abusive, apologizing becomes your way of avoiding conflict, trying to soften their moods, or defusing the tension you've been conditioned to feel responsible for. It's not peace, it's submission disguised as humility. You start to believe that everything is your fault. If they're distant, it must be something you did. If they're angry, you must have triggered it. If they cheat, you wonder what you lacked. That kind of mental conditioning is no accident. It's manipulation at its most dangerous. Emotional abusers are experts at flipping the narrative so that you carry the weight of their dysfunction. You'll hear phrases like, "You're the reason I'm like this. If you didn't act that way, I wouldn't get so angry. You made me say that." And with each one, your confidence erodes. You take the blame just to stop the fighting. You become the emotional shock absorber for their chaos. But here's the quiet tragedy. The more you apologize, the more invisible you become. You stop advocating for yourself. You silence your discomfort. You over-explain every boundary, every decision, every feeling just to make sure they don't feel attacked by your truth. And in doing so, you abandon yourself to maintain a false sense of harmony. Let's be clear, apologizing for something you didn't do is not kindness, it's fear in disguise. And that fear is a direct result of emotional abuse. The truth is, you're not the problem. You're not the villain in their story. You're just the person who's been told for so long that your truth doesn't matter that you've started to believe it. But your truth does matter. Your feelings are real. Your needs are valid. You are not difficult, dramatic, or delusional for wanting to be respected. Healing begins the moment you stop apologizing for who you are. You don't owe an apology for speaking your truth. You don't owe an apology for expecting respect. And you absolutely do not owe an apology for not tolerating emotional manipulation. It's time to unlearn the habit of self-blame and relearn the language of self-worth. It's time to stop saying sorry and start saying, I deserve better, because you do, always. In emotionally abusive relationships, control often comes wrapped in silence, not in raised voices, but in strategic withdrawals, in eerie quiet, in cold stares that say more than words ever could. It's not always yelling that causes the most damage. Sometimes it's the silence after a disagreement. The kind that leaves you pacing, apologizing, and begging just to feel seen again. This is emotional punishment, and it's calculated. When you express discomfort, share a feeling, or stand up for yourself, instead of listening or engaging, they shut down. Suddenly, they become distant, cold, or detached. They may ignore your texts, give you one-word answers, or walk around the house like you're invisible. It's as if they flipped a switch and the warmth they once gave you is gone just like that. What they're doing is creating emotional starvation. They know that human beings are wired for connection. They know that love and attention feel like safety to you. So they remove that safety when you stop being convenient for them. It's not about communication, it's about power. Their silence is meant to make you uncomfortable, anxious, and ultimately compliant. You begin to ask yourself, did I say something wrong? You start tiptoeing around their moods, trying to decode their silence like it's a puzzle you can solve. You blame yourself for their withdrawal, and eventually you do the very thing they want. You shrink. You apologize for things you didn't do. You stop bringing up issues. You avoid asking for anything. You give up your emotional needs just to get back in their good graces. That's not love, that's emotional conditioning. And it doesn't end with silence. Sometimes their punishment comes in the form of sudden mood shifts. One moment they're loving, laughing, affectionate, and the next they're cold, irritated, hostile. You're left confused, feeling like you did something wrong, but you can't figure out what. That's the point. They want to keep you disoriented. Because when you're constantly on edge, constantly walking on eggshells, you're easier to control. They don't need to hit you to hurt you. They just have to pull away when you get too close to your truth. Here's a truth you must hold on to. A healthy relationship doesn't make you anxious every time you speak your mind. A healthy person doesn't weaponize affection and emotional availability. Silence should never be a punishment. Withdrawal should never be a form of control. Love should never feel like a reward you have to earn. If you find yourself living in fear of someone's moods, constantly trying to chase back connection, constantly trying to please your way into being treated kindly, you are not in love. You are in a cycle of emotional manipulation. And the most powerful thing you can do is break it. You deserve consistent, safe, emotionally mature love. You deserve to speak freely, feel fully, and never fear abandonment for being authentic. Let their silence be the loudest sign you need. This is not love. It's control. And you have every right to walk away. Leaving an emotionally abusive relationship is not just about packing your things or changing your phone number. It's about reclaiming your identity, your voice, and your right to exist without fear. It's not about being petty or dramatic. It's about surviving and then choosing to live. You see, emotional abuse is designed to wear you down so quietly that you don't even realize how much of yourself you've given up. Your laughter becomes quieter, your dreams become smaller, your voice becomes more hesitant, your spirit dims. Day by day, piece by piece, you trade in your peace for temporary acceptance. You barter your boundaries to avoid punishment. You bend until you forget how it feels to stand tall. So when you leave, don't leave quietly, leave loud, weave, with your truth echoing behind you like thunder. Leave with your dignity wrapped around your shoulders like armor. Because here's what they don't expect. They don't expect you to stop explaining. They don't expect you to stop apologizing. They don't expect you to remember who you were before they made you believe you were too much or not enough. Leaving loud doesn't mean revenge. It means no more whispering your pain. It means speaking your story out loud. Even if your voice shakes, it means letting the world know, I will never be treated like that again. Leave fully, not halfway. Don't leave 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Still checking on them, still answering their texts, still hoping they'll finally say what they never could when you were breaking in front of them. Closure doesn't come from them. It comes from you choosing yourself over and over, even when it hurts. Don't let guilt pull you back. Don't let fear convince you that you won't find love again. Don't let the voice they planted in your head keep whispering that you're too sensitive, too emotional, too flawed. That voice isn't yours. That was their tool. And now it's your job to unlearn it. Leave now. Not when they get better, not after one more chance, not when you feel strong enough. There is no perfect time. There is only now. And now is sacred. Now is when your future begins. Now is when you choose your soul over your suffering. You're not walking away because you gave up. You're walking away because you finally remembered. You were never meant to be kept small just to be kept at all. So gather your courage, speak your truth, and walk away, not because you don't love them anymore, but because you love yourself enough to stop tolerating what was never love in the first place. Believe loud, fully, believe now.